I found myself staring at the notification that kept flashing on my phone screen. 27 missed calls. 15 voicemails. Dozens of text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. The bathroom tile felt cold beneath my feet as I stood there, frozen in disbelief, the shower still running behind me. With trembling fingers, I tapped on one of the messages from an unknown sender. "Hey sexy. Saw your pics on Cassidy's feed. DM me if you're looking for a good time." My stomach lurched violently. I scrolled frantically to another message. "Didn't know you were such a freak, Eleanor. Your boyfriend must be one lucky dude." The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. I collapsed onto the edge of the bathtub, my chest constricting with each desperate attempt to breathe. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not like this. My name is Eleanor Winters, and until this morning, I believed Cassidy Hayes was my best friend. I finally managed to compose myself enough to pick up my phone and navigate to Instagram. My hands were still shaking as I typed in Cassidy's username. Her latest post showed a grid of photos, my photos. Private photos I'd taken for the long-distance boyfriend I'd broken up with 3 months ago. Photos that had never been meant for public consumption. The caption read, "My girl Elle knows how to have fun. #wildchild, #nofilter, #body positivity." There were over 5,000 likes. Hundreds of comments. My vision blurred as hot tears streamed down my face. This was a nightmare, a violation so profound I could barely process it. The photos had been taken from my personal cloud storage account, which Cassidy had access to from the time we'd collaborated on a work project last year. I'd trusted her completely. The sudden pounding on my apartment door made me jump. I quickly wiped my face, turned off the shower I'd forgotten was still running, and wrapped myself in a robe. Through the peephole, I saw my neighbor, Lisa. "Elle, are you okay? I've been calling you for hours," she said when I opened the door, her face etched with concern. "You've seen them." It wasn't a question. Lisa nodded grimly. "Everyone has. It's all over social media." Cassidy tagged the entire office. The humiliation hit me all over again, a fresh wave of nausea rising in my throat. As the social media coordinator for Meridian Publishing, I'd worked hard to build a professional reputation. Now, in the span of a few hours, all of that had been reduced to a series of intimate photos that were never meant to leave my private gallery. Why would she do this? I whispered, more to myself than to Lisa. Lisa's expression hardened. I heard her bragging to some of the interns yesterday. Something about how her follower count had plateaued and she needed explosive content to hit 100K. Explosive content. That's what I was to her. Not a friend. Not even a person. Just content. "You need to call HR," Lisa urged. "What she did is illegal. It's revenge porn." But it wasn't revenge, I said numbly. It was calculated business. Does that make it any better? Lisa countered. "Call HR, Elle. And then call a lawyer." After Lisa left, I sat in stunned silence for what felt like hours. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, colleagues checking on me, strangers making lewd comments, and finally, a text from Cassidy herself. "Hey girl. Your pics are blowing up. You should be thanking me, I made you famous. Drinks later to celebrate? XOXO." Something inside me snapped. The paralyzing shock gave way to a white-hot fury unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for, Calvin Reed, Cassidy's direct supervisor and the VP of marketing at Meridian. Before I could reconsider, I pressed call. His deep voice answered on the third ring. Eleanor? Is everything okay? I've been trying to reach you all morning. I took a deep breath. No, Calvin, everything is not okay. And I need to talk to you about Cassidy Hayes. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, I'm listening. By the time I finished explaining the situation, Calvin's voice had transformed from confusion to cold anger. This is completely unacceptable, Eleanor. Not just a violation of company policy but potentially criminal. I want you to know we take this extremely seriously. Thank you. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached, as if coming from someone else entirely. I'm calling an emergency meeting with HR and legal. Can you come in? I glanced at the clock. It was barely 9 a.m., but it felt like this day had already lasted an eternity. Yes. I'll be there in an hour. After hanging up, I moved on autopilot, showering properly this time, dressing in my most professional outfit, a black pantsuit that somehow felt like armor. As I applied concealer to cover the evidence of my tears, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked different. Harder. Resolute. By the time I pulled into the Meridian Publishing parking lot, my phone showed 15 missed calls from Cassidy. She must have realized the gravity of what she'd done, or at least, that there would be consequences. I ignored them all and walked into the building with my head held high, despite feeling like every eye was on me, every whisper about me. The receptionist gave me a sympathetic look as I passed, confirming my worst fears. Everyone knew. Calvin was waiting for me at the elevator. HR and legal are ready when you are, he said, leading me to a conference room where a small group of executives sat around a polished table. I recognized Fiona from HR and Marcus from legal. There was also a woman I didn't know, who was introduced as Patricia Winters, external counsel specializing in privacy law. Ms. Winters, Patricia began, I want you to know that what happened to you constitutes a serious violation of privacy laws. The non-consensual sharing of intimate images is a criminal offense in this state. We've already placed Cassidy on administrative leave pending investigation, Fiona added. But given the evidence, I don't think there's much to investigate. Her actions were clearly deliberate and for personal gain. Calvin leaned forward. Eleanor, we want to follow your lead here. Do you want to press criminal charges? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Criminal charges would mean police reports, possibly court appearances, and inevitably, more exposure. But the alternative, letting Cassidy get away with just losing her job, didn't feel like justice either. Before I could respond, Patricia spoke again. There's another option. We can help you file for an emergency takedown of the images across all platforms, coupled with a cease and desist. Given the circumstances, we could also pursue civil damages. And what about everyone who's already seen them? I asked, the words bitter on my tongue. We can't undo that, Marcus admitted. But we can contain the damage and make it clear there will be serious consequences for anyone who reshares or reposts. As they outlined the various legal avenues available, a notification popped up on my phone. Cassidy had just gone live on Instagram. Without thinking, I pulled out my phone and tapped on the notification. The executives fell silent as Cassidy's tearful face filled my screen. I just want to say I'm so sorry for what happened, she was saying, her voice trembling. I never meant to hurt Eleanor. It was just a stupid mistake. I thought I was helping her build confidence. If you're watching this, Elle, please call me back. I love you, girl. You're my best friend. The blatant lie made my blood boil. This wasn't an apology, it was damage control. She was trying to craft a narrative where she was the misunderstood friend rather than the calculating opportunist who had violated my privacy for likes and followers. I looked up from the phone to find everyone at the table watching me intently. I want to pursue every option available, I said firmly. Criminal, civil, everything. And I want it on record that Cassidy Hayes just lied to thousands of people about her intentions. Patricia nodded approvingly. We'll start immediately. As the meeting concluded, Calvin pulled me aside. We're terminating her employment, effective immediately. And Eleanor. I'm truly sorry this happened. If you need time off, just say the word. Thank you, I said, but I'd rather keep working. I refused to let her take that from me too. I held it together until I reached my car, then finally allowed myself to break down. Sobs racked my body as I gripped the steering wheel, the full weight of the day crashing down on me. My privacy had been violated. My trust had been shattered. My professional reputation was at risk. But I wasn't going to hide. I would face this head-on, with every legal resource at my disposal. Cassidy had wanted attention, had used my private photos to get it. Now she was going to get a different kind of attention altogether. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. How did it go? I typed back, she's fired. And it's only the beginning. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of something like power. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next few days passed in a blur of legal meetings, takedown notices, and emotional exhaustion. Patricia and her team worked tirelessly to have the photos removed from social media platforms, though we all knew the internet never truly forgets. Still, each successful takedown felt like a small victory in the midst of overwhelming defeat. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the incident, I received a call from Marcus in legal. Cassidy was just served with papers, he informed me. Both the criminal complaint and the civil suit. How did she react? I couldn't help asking. Marcus paused. According to the process server, she seemed surprised. Of course she was surprised. People like Cassidy never expect consequences. They float through life believing their actions exist in a vacuum, that the pain they cause others is a reasonable price for their own advancement. There's something else, Marcus continued. She's been trying to reach you through her attorney. They want to discuss a settlement. I laughed hollowly. Tell them no. Eleanor, it might be worth considering. A settlement would mean. It would mean she gets to pay her way out of responsibility, I interrupted. No amount of money can undo what she did. After hanging up, I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the ceiling. My inbox was overflowing with messages from concerned colleagues, though I suspected many were driven more by morbid curiosity than genuine empathy. A knock at my office door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Diane, the company's head of IT security. I have something you should see, she said, placing a folder on my desk. We've been monitoring company devices since the incident. Cassidy tried to access several cloud accounts from her work laptop before we terminated her access. Including yours. I flipped through the printouts, each page a record of attempted breaches. She was trying to get more photos? Diane nodded grimly. Looks that way. She also tried to delete evidence of her previous access. Can you use this in the legal case? I asked. Already sent copies to Marcus and Patricia. This strengthens both the civil and criminal complaints. Diane hesitated before adding, there's something else. She was also accessing the personal data of several other employees. We're still investigating the extent of it. The revelation sent a chill down my spine. How many others might have been victimized if Cassidy hadn't been caught? How long had she been mining our personal data for content she could exploit? Thank you for telling me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. After Diane left, I sat motionless, processing this new information. The violation was even more extensive than I'd initially thought. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment, it was a pattern of predatory behavior. My desk phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was reception. Ms. Winters, there's someone here to see you. A Ms. Hayes? She's quite insistent. My pulse quickened. Cassidy is there? Now? Yes. Should I call security? I considered it for a moment. No. Send her up. I had spent a week avoiding Cassidy's calls and messages, blocking her on every platform, refusing to engage. But now, with the legal machinery in full motion and the evidence of her broader violations in hand, I felt ready to face her. When she appeared in my doorway, I barely recognized her. The usually immaculate Cassidy Hayes looked disheveled, her designer clothes wrinkled, her makeup-free face puffy from crying. But her eyes still held that calculating gleam I now realized had always been there. Elle, she began, her voice breaking. Please, you have to call this off. My life is over. I can't afford these legal fees. I'm going to lose my apartment. My parents won't even talk to me. I gestured for her to sit, keeping my desk between us like a barrier. You should have thought about that before you violated my privacy for Instagram likes. It was a mistake, she cried. I wasn't thinking clearly. I've been under so much pressure with my social media career, and I just... Social media career? I cut her off. You mean your job as Meridian's junior marketing associate? The one you used to access my private photos? The one you've now lost because of your own actions? She flinched. You know what I mean. My influencer work. It's how I pay my bills. No, Cassidy. Your Meridian salary is how you paid your bills. Your influencer work was a side hustle that you prioritized over basic human decency. Please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I'll do anything. I'll take it all down. I'll post a real apology. It's too late for that, I said coldly. The damage is done. And it's not just me, is it? IT found evidence you were accessing other employees' data too. The blood drained from her face. That was for marketing research. For work. Save it for your deposition. I stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. You betrayed me, Cassidy. You betrayed everyone at this company. And now you're facing the consequences. You're ruining my life, she shouted, suddenly angry. Over some stupid photos that nobody even cares about anymore. The internet has moved on, why can't you? Her words hit like a physical blow, but I refused to show it. Security will escort you out now. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at my door. I'd texted reception as soon as Cassidy had begun raising her voice. This isn't over, she hissed as they approached. You think you're so perfect, Eleanor. But I know things about you. Things that would. Ms. Hayes, one of the guards interrupted firmly. You need to leave the premises now. As they led her away, her threats echoing down the hallway, I sank back into my chair. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anger. Even now, Faced with the consequences of her actions, Cassidy was still trying to manipulate and threaten her way out of responsibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Just heard Cassidy showed up at your office. Are you okay? I typed back, I'm fine. But I want to add witness intimidation to the complaint. Patricia's response was immediate, already on it. Don't worry, Eleanor. We're going to win this. For the first time since this nightmare began, I actually believed it. The legal proceedings moved forward with agonizing slowness. Each day brought new developments, Cassidy's attorney filing motions to dismiss, our team countering with additional evidence, the media occasionally picking up the story and forcing me to relive the humiliation all over again. But something else was happening too. Women from other companies started reaching out to me, sharing their own stories of having private images shared without consent. Some by ex-partners, others by supposed friends. The pattern was always the same: violation, humiliation, and institutions too uncomfortable or ill-equipped to address it. Patricia suggested I start a support group, but that felt too public, too exposing. Instead, I began meeting with these women individually, connecting them with legal resources, offering the kind of support I wished I'd had from the beginning. 3 months after the incident, I was having coffee with Maya, a woman whose college roommate had shared her private photos in a group chat. The worst part, Maya said, stirring her latte absently, is that everyone acts like it's your fault. Like you shouldn't have taken the photos in the first place. I know, I agreed. As if trust is a luxury we can't afford. Exactly. But what you're doing, fighting back, making her face consequences, it's inspiring. Maya hesitated before adding, though I'm not sure I would have had the courage to do the same. I considered this for a moment. It's not about courage, really. It's about refusing to let someone else write your story. After Maya left, I checked my email to find a message from Marcus. Cassidy's attorney has requested another settlement conference. They're getting desperate. Trial date is approaching. I had rejected 3 settlement offers already. Each one came with a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from speaking about the case. The money they offered kept increasing, but my answer remained the same. Some things were more important than money. Like setting a precedent. Like making sure Cassidy, and others like her, understood that violations like this carried real consequences. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, my doorbell rang. Standing outside was the last person I expected to see, Cassidy's mother, Margaret Hayes. Ms. Winters, she began formally, may I come in? I'd like to speak with you about my daughter. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Margaret Hayes was the spitting image of her daughter, or rather, Cassidy was the spitting image of her mother. Same blonde hair, same sharp features, same calculating eyes. I'll get right to the point, she said, declining my half-hearted offer of tea. This vendetta against Cassidy has gone on long enough. She made a mistake. A terrible one, I admit. But destroying her life won't undo what happened. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. This isn't a vendetta, Mrs. Hayes. It's accountability. Call it what you want, she dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. But I know my daughter. She's suffered enough. She can't get a job. Her influencer contracts have all been cancelled. She's moving back home next week because she can't make rent. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. But those are the consequences of her actions, not mine. Margaret's eyes hardened. Let me be clear, Ms. Winters. Our family has resources. Connections. If this goes to trial, We'll make sure every detail of your personal life is examined under a microscope. Every relationship, every photo, every questionable decision. Are you prepared for that kind of scrutiny? The threat was unmistakable. Like mother, like daughter. Are you threatening me, Mrs. Hayes? I'm being realistic, she replied coolly. Nobody comes out of these situations unscathed. The smart choice would be to accept the settlement, put this unpleasantness behind you, and move on with your life. I thought about all the women like Maya. All the victims who had reached out to me, finding courage in my stand against Cassidy. I thought about what it would mean to accept a payoff and disappear behind an NDA. The smart choice, I said finally, would be for you to leave my apartment before I call my attorney and report this conversation as witness intimidation. The same crime your daughter already committed. Margaret's face flushed with anger. You'll regret this, she snapped, gathering her designer purse. As I closed the door behind her, I immediately called Patricia. Cassidy's mother just tried to threaten me into taking the settlement, I explained, recounting the conversation. Patricia's response was immediate. This is excellent news. It is? Absolutely. She just handed us another piece of evidence on a silver platter. Witness intimidation by proxy. I'll file a motion in the morning to have this added to our case. After hanging up, I sat on my couch, strangely calm despite the confrontation. The Hayes family clearly thought they could bully their way out of accountability. They had miscalculated. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Calvin waiting for me. Eleanor, he began cautiously, we've received a rather concerning email from Cassidy's attorney. They're threatening to sue Meridian for creating a hostile work environment. I couldn't help but laugh. On what grounds? She's the one who violated company policy and broke the law. They're claiming the company failed to properly secure employee personal data, enabling her to access your cloud storage. He shook his head. It's a desperate move, but our general counsel wants to discuss our options. Which are? Settling the case. Adding Meridian as a co-defendant would help Cassidy's case and potentially force our hand to protect the company's reputation. I felt a wave of betrayal. So after all your talk about supporting me, you're now suggesting I drop the case to protect Meridian? Calvin looked uncomfortable. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just passing along the concerns from higher up. Tell them I said no, I replied firmly. And remind them that if they try to pressure me on this, I'll have a pretty strong case for workplace retaliation. As Calvin left, looking chastened, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Just got word from the DA. Criminal charges are officially being filed against Cassidy. State versus Hayes. Arraignment next week. The news should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like another step in an exhausting journey I'd never asked to take. But at least it was movement. At least it was progress. At least it meant Cassidy wouldn't get away with what she'd done. Not to me. Not to anyone else. The weeks leading up to the trial were a blur of depositions, meetings with prosecutors, and increasingly desperate attempts by Cassidy's team to make the case go away. The settlement offers climbed to ridiculous amounts, the latest being $500,000. $500,000 for my silence. For my complicity in letting her escape real consequences. I declined. The day before the trial was set to begin, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Eleanor, it's Cassidy. Please don't hang up. I should have ended the call immediately, but something in her voice, a rawness I'd never heard before, made me hesitate. What do you want, Cassidy? I want to apologize. For real this time. She took a shaky breath. No cameras, no audience, no legal team telling me what to say. Just, I'm sorry. What I did was unforgivable. I remained silent, unsure how to respond. I was so obsessed with my follower count, with being relevant, that I lost sight of what actually matters, she continued. I betrayed the one person who was always in my corner. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Why are you telling me this now? I asked cautiously. The trial starts tomorrow. Another shaky breath. Because regardless of what happens in court, I needed you to hear it from me. The real me, not the person I've been pretending to be. I appreciate that, I said, surprised to find I actually meant it. But it doesn't change anything. I know. Her voice cracked. I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I took from you wasn't just privacy. It was trust. Security. Peace of mind. And I'd give anything to undo that. After we hung up, I sat in silence, turning the conversation over in my mind. Was it a genuine moment of remorse? Or another manipulation tactic, a last-ditch effort to soften me before trial? It didn't matter, I decided. Regardless of Cassidy's 11th-hour epiphany, the legal process needed to play out. Not just for me, but for all the women who had reached out, who were watching to see if justice was possible. The first day of the trial dawned clear and cool. I dressed carefully in a simple navy suit, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. Patricia had coached me on what to expect, the formal procedures, the potential media presence, how to maintain my composure under cross-examination. What she hadn't prepared me for was the sight of Cassidy, seated beside her attorney, looking small and defeated. Gone was the confident, bubbly social media maven. In her place sat a young woman in a conservative gray dress, her previously highlighted hair now a dull brown, her face free of makeup. The transformation was jarring. This was Cassidy stripped of her carefully curated persona. Cassidy facing the reality she'd created. As the proceedings began, I found myself oddly detached, as if watching the trial happen to someone else. The opening statements, the presentation of evidence, the technical testimony about cloud storage and digital forensics, it all seemed distant, academic. Until I was called to testify. As I took the stand and swore to tell the truth, the reality of the situation came crashing back. This wasn't happening to someone else. It was happening to me. Because of choices Cassidy had made. Choices that had altered the course of my life irrevocably. The prosecutor, a no-nonsense woman named Claire Martinez, led me through my testimony methodically. Ms. Winters, can you describe your relationship with the defendant prior to the incident? Cassidy was my closest friend, I said, my voice steady. We met at work 3 years ago and quickly became inseparable. I trusted her completely. And to your knowledge, did Ms. Hayes have legitimate access to your cloud storage account? Yes, for a work project the previous year. I never revoked her access because it never occurred to me that she would abuse it. Can you describe how you discovered that your private photos had been shared without your consent? I took a deep breath, recounting that terrible morning in my bathroom, the flood of messages, the public humiliation. As I spoke, I glanced at Cassidy. She was staring down at the table, tears streaming silently down her face. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of pity. Then I remembered her mother's threats, the months of legal maneuvering, the attempts to escape accountability, and the pity dissipated. Claire continued. And what impact has this violation had on your life, Ms. Winters? I considered the question carefully. The immediate impact was professional embarrassment and personal violation. But the lasting impact has been more profound. I've lost my sense of security, my ability to trust, my belief that the people closest to me have my best interests at heart. Thank you, Ms. Winters. No further questions. Cassidy's attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, approached for cross-examination. His strategy became immediately apparent: blame the victim. Ms. Winters, you willingly took these intimate photos of yourself, correct? Objection, Claire called out. Relevance goes to the nature of the content, Your Honor, the defense attorney argued. I'll allow it, the judge ruled. But tread carefully, counsel. I straightened in my seat. Yes, I took the photos. For my then boyfriend, with whom I was in a long-distance relationship. And you stored these photos in a cloud account that you had shared with Ms. Hayes? For a specific work project, yes. Did you ever explicitly tell Ms. Hayes not to access or share those photos? I felt my face flush with indignation. I didn't think I needed to explicitly tell my best friend not to steal and publish my private photos. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The defense attorney pressed on. But you never revoked her access after the work project was completed, did you? No, I admitted. Because I trusted her. One could argue that by keeping the photos in a shared account, you implicitly consented to. Objection. Claire's voice rang out. Counsel is testifying, not questioning. Sustained. The cross-examination continued in this vein, with the defense attorney trying to shift blame onto me for having taken the photos in the first place, for having stored them in the cloud, for having trusted Cassidy. Each insinuation made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure, remembering Patricia's advice: don't get defensive, don't get emotional, just state the facts. By the time I was excused from the stand, I was mentally exhausted but resolute. The defense's strategy was transparent and deeply flawed. They were banking on outdated notions of shame and victim blaming to win sympathy for Cassidy. When court adjourned for the day, Patricia met me outside. You did wonderfully, she assured me. The defense is desperate. That victim-blaming approach rarely works with modern juries, especially in cases like this. As we walked toward the parking lot, I spotted Cassidy standing alone, waiting for her ride. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away, her shoulders hunched with what looked like genuine shame. The next day, Cassidy took the stand in her own defense. Gone was the tearful, seemingly remorseful woman from her phone call. In her place was a carefully coached defendant, reciting lines about misunderstanding, about thinking she was helping me embrace body positivity, about never intending harm. But under cross-examination by Claire, the facade cracked. Ms. Hayes, Claire began, holding up a printout of text messages. Are these communications between you and a friend named Zoe Mitchell? Cassidy paled. Yes. Would you please read the highlighted exchange for the court? Cassidy's hands trembled as she took the paper. Zoe, are you sure Elle would be okay with you posting those? They seem pretty private. Me, who cares? I need the engagement. My followers are bored with my regular content, and these will definitely get attention. The courtroom fell silent. So you were aware that the photos were private, Claire pressed. I wasn't thinking clearly. But you were thinking clearly enough to recognize their potential for increasing your social media engagement, correct? Cassidy's carefully constructed defense crumbled under Claire's relentless questioning. By the time she stepped down, it was clear to everyone in the courtroom that her actions had been deliberate, calculated, and motivated by a desperate grab for attention and influence. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning with a verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Cassidy Hayes, guilty on all charges. The words washed over me in a wave of vindication and relief. Tears sprang to my eyes, not of sadness or lingering hurt, but of release. After months of fighting, of being questioned and doubted and blamed, justice had finally been served. Cassidy, standing to hear the verdict, seemed to shrink with each word. When the judge announced that sentencing would occur in 3 weeks, she let out a strangled sob. Her attorney put a steadying hand on her arm, but she shook it off, her eyes finding mine in the gallery. I expected to see hatred there, or perhaps more of the calculation I'd grown to recognize. Instead, I saw resignation. Acceptance. The look of someone finally confronting the reality of their own actions. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for a statement. With Patricia at my side, I approached the microphones. Today's verdict sends a clear message, I began, my voice stronger than I'd expected. Privacy is a right, not a privilege. Trust is sacred, not a commodity. And actions have consequences, regardless of your follower count or social media status. I continued, gaining confidence with each word. This case was never just about me. It was about every person who has had their privacy violated, their trust betrayed, their autonomy disregarded. It was about setting a precedent that in the digital age, consent matters more than ever. As the cameras flashed and reporters called out questions, I spotted Maya in the crowd, along with several other women who had reached out to me over the past months. Their presence reminded me of something important, that my painful experience had created a community, a support network for others facing similar violations. Moving forward, I concluded, I plan to establish a foundation to support victims of privacy violations and digital abuse. No one should have to fight this battle alone. Later that evening, as I sat in my apartment, finally allowing myself to process the events of the day, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. I saw you on the news. Thank you for fighting for all of us. You've given me the courage to pursue my own case. Jessica. I smiled, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't expected to find in this ordeal. What Cassidy had done to me was unforgivable. The pain and humiliation couldn't be erased. But perhaps something meaningful could emerge from it, a platform for change, for advocacy, for support. 3 weeks later, I returned to the courthouse for Cassidy's sentencing. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, listened to statements from both sides before delivering her decision. Ms. Hayes, she began, the crime you committed may seem minor to some, a momentary lapse in judgment, a misguided attempt at social media fame. But the impact of your actions has been profound and far-reaching. She continued, in addition to the traumatic violation experienced by Ms. Winters, your actions have contributed to a culture that devalues privacy, consent, and basic human dignity in favor of likes, shares, and online attention. Cassidy stood with her head bowed, accepting the rebuke without protest. Taking all factors into consideration, I hereby sentence you to 18 months in prison, with the possibility of parole after 6 months, plus 3 years of probation. Additionally, you will perform 500 hours of community service focused on digital ethics education, and pay restitution to Ms. Winters in the amount of $75,000. The sentence was more severe than expected. I heard gasps from the gallery, saw Margaret Hayes crumple in her seat. Cassidy herself seemed resigned, nodding slightly as if acknowledging the justice of the punishment. As she was led away, our eyes met one final time. There was no hatred there, no resentment, just a profound sadness and, perhaps, the glimmer of understanding. Outside the courthouse, autumn light spilled across the stone steps, a stark contrast to the fluorescent harshness of the courtroom we'd just left. Reporters huddled in clusters, their voices creating a discordant symphony of questions. I felt strangely detached from it all, as if watching myself from a distance. Patricia squeezed my elbow. "You don't have to speak to anyone today." "I know," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "But I want to." As I stepped toward the microphones, I caught sight of Margaret Hayes hovering at the periphery, her impeccable facade finally crumbling. For a moment, our eyes met, mother to daughter's former friend, and I saw something unexpected: recognition. Not of me specifically, but of what her daughter had become under her guidance. Of what they had both lost. Later that evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights blink to life, my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from an unexpected sender, a photo from Lisa. It showed our office bulletin board, now adorned with a new edition, a printout of an article titled "Justice Served in Landmark Privacy Case," with a handwritten note beneath it, "Our hero." I smiled, tracing my finger across the screen. Something had shifted inside me, the raw wound slowly transforming into a source of strength. The violation would always be part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. It wasn't even the most important part. 6 months after the sentencing, I stood before a crowded auditorium, the launch event for the Eleanor Winters Foundation for Digital Privacy Rights. Behind me, a projected slide showed our first initiative, educational workshops for schools, teaching teenagers about consent in the digital age. From personal violation to public vindication, I began. My journey is unfortunately not unique. But the outcome can be. Together, we can create a world where privacy is respected, consent is required, and justice is accessible to all. As applause filled the room, I thought of Cassidy, now halfway through her sentence. I hoped that somewhere in the midst of consequence, she too was finding a path toward redemption. Some betrayals can never be undone. But they can be transformed, from wounds into wisdom, from trauma into purpose. This was mine.